Welcome back to episode 18 of In Light of the Gospel. Today I'm talking to a rather new acquaintance of mine. I've known him now for the last few months. His name is George Giesbrecht, and he's got a powerful testimony personally, but one of the things that we really focus on today is how he has been able to get involved with people who are looking to finally get free from serious drug addiction, like people who are willing to sell themselves, if need be, to get the next hit, and somehow a few of them are getting free from this terrible plague. I myself personally don't know if I could have the patience and the time and the energy to pour into these kinds of people. As ashamed as I may be to say that, it would be too much for me to bear. I feel like I want to help people immediately. I want to give them something that they can do, something that they can understand and believe and walk free. But George has been pouring his life into people who despise him for it, who hate him for it, who resist him, and then finally they break and they cave and they look for help. And he's been able to help now a handful of people himself personally, and he's been able to influence many more to go to a place in BC called the Joshua House. And it's helped people, not necessarily the house itself, but the place has provided an opportunity for people to separate themselves from all their day-to-day struggles and their hurts, and then get completely clean from the drugs for once, and then they're getting the gospel. They're hearing what Christ has done for them finally, and it's working. It's delivering people from their sin, and I pray to God that these people would continue to walk that way, because once your body becomes addicted to something, there will always be somewhat of an inkling for your body to go back that way. But the Bible says that the body of sin has been destroyed. And from henceforth, we should not serve sin, because we are no longer slaves to sin. So I'm hoping that will be the case with many of these people that George has been able to help. And I hope that you'll be blessed by this story. Perhaps some of you have friends, acquaintances, family members who are still struggling with this type of addiction. And maybe this will offer just a little glimmer of hope. That would be my prayer and hope for today's podcast. Thanks again for tuning in, and God bless you. I'm assuming, were born in Mexico.
In Durango, Mexico.
Okay.
Yeah.
We were from the Chihuahua DARP.
Yeah, and I was actually quite young yet when we moved to Ontario. Well, we came and we visited first. We're here for a couple months, and then after that we went back for a little while, and then we came here and we stayed here. I haven't been to Mexico now for, it's got to be close to 30 years.
How old were you when you came here then?
11 years.
11 years old. So you went through school here in Canada?
I didn't even go to school here. I only went to school here a couple of times after I messed it up at the schools, because I just didn't like school, and I couldn't speak the English language, and everybody was just picking on us. We're the Mexican Mennonites, right? Kind of thing. And it just felt like I don't like school, and I messed it up. I stole, and just to make sure that I would mess it up. And then of course my dad was working for Walker Farms, and he got us there as a very young age.
As you can work.
And they taught me how to drive truck right away, and pick up stones in the field and stuff like that, and work with the cows.
Well, I mean, we're going to kind of go back and forth in your story here quite a bit, but one thing you've told me recently that really is amazing is that when you got saved 3 years ago, you couldn't really read English at all.
No.
Or read anything, right?
No, because I never
You never got any education. Because even now, you have a little bit of a Mennonite accent. Like, I can hear that you're from Mexico. But you've been here since you were a kid.
Yeah.
But no school, really.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and I know a lot of people, they're saying that I have a Russian accent. So
that sounds kind of Russian.
Sometimes, yeah. But I have never. I did go to Tantra College in Tolstoy for a little bit to do a little bit of reading and writing on there, but it because of work and everything, I couldn't really.
Just couldn't focus on it.
And I'll tell you that the most where I have learned how to read was actually from the Bible.
Now, in the last 3 years.
In the last 3 years. Before that, I was very poor. Like, I mean, I hated reading. I hated it, and I never, because I guess I never learned it, right?
Yeah. So you're here from 11 years old. You got a bunch of siblings?
Yeah, I got 4 brothers and 1 sister.
And you're closer to the top?
I'm the oldest one.
You're the oldest one.
I'm the oldest one from my family, yeah.
So from young on, you were just pushed into work.
And I enjoyed it. I was one of those guys, you know what, I wanted the hands-on.
Get me out of the classroom and
I don't want
in
these
the field.
books. I don't want these books. I don't want to do this here. I hated sitting. I wanted to get out, and I wanted to be the hands-on person. And yeah, and I liked it much better to go out and work than go to school anyways.
Interesting.
Because I hated being picked on, and that was one thing that was happening a lot.
When you did go to school, was it public school?
Oh yeah.
Okay,
It was
and so
actually
then
here in Stratfordville.
And then they really made fun of Mexican Mennonites.
Oh
eh?
yes, and it was very bad at that time. Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of times people talk about these marginalized groups or minorities that get ridiculed and mocked or bullied and stuff. And we don't usually get put in that group, but some Mennonite people, they got it bad at school. Like they got constantly made fun of.
I never got beaten up and stuff like that, but always called names and stuff like that, and always being pushed in the corner.
Yeah.
And we always had to go to ESL class, and that was always very, very embarrassing. That was the most embarrassing thing in my school. And then be with the younger ones.
Yeah.
And here you are, an old person, or older anyways, and you couldn't do nothing. Oh man.
Sitting with the little 5-year-olds and 6-year-olds and stuff.
Kind of kindergarten.
So did that kind of start to develop your behaviors?
I think in ways I think it got it worse. It made things bad for me because I think there was just anger that kind of built up and yeah, it's just I never trusted anyone. I never wanted to be with a bunch of people or anybody that I didn't know at that time. I know I just don't remember much of it from after I left the school. There it was more just going to work and we did a lot of hours. We did work a lot. We worked for Walker for quite some time, and then we moved to Brantford by Waterford area. Yeah, we worked for the Sitco Farms there.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, we worked a lot of hours.
So
there.
did your parents have no concern whatsoever about you being educated and reading and writing? That just never really came up?
I don't know. I think they would have, but because I just had absolutely no care for it, I think they just kind of thought, you know what, if that's just what he wants, if he wants to be a hands-on person, that's.
How about your younger siblings?
No, I think from I think that the oldest three, me and Abe and Henry, I think all of us were kind of all the same.
Just go work.
Yeah, but from Nancy down, like Nancy and Ben and John, those three, they had a lot more education.
I see.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. And so here you were, old colony boy.
Yep.
Work.
Well, actually, at that time, I don't even know if I should even say old colony boy. We didn't even go to church.
Just didn't go?
Yeah, because the church was far away. We didn't even
Especially
really
when you're out in Brantford.
Yeah. But every now and then it was, we did go. But when I got older, as soon as I started driving, that's when I started going on my own.
To church.
Yeah, and I didn't go to church more because of learning from the gospel. It was more, learn people and be with people and find friends. That was kind of a thing, to go find friends. Or you could sit in the back seat there and just go and talk to people and find out what's going on and that they're going to be doing this afternoon.
See
and
where everybody's at. So did you have much concept of God and who He is or anything like that, or you just didn't really think about that a whole lot?
No, at that time it wasn't really brought into us much, and yeah, never.
Not a lot of fear of dying or anything?
No, not at that time. I didn't even know any of that at that time much, no. It was just living like a regular person, I guess, and yeah.
So did you get into a lot of trouble then through your teenage years?
Lots. I started drinking when I was very, very young. I have stolen so much alcohol from people, from my dad. I stole alcohol from him, and yeah, it was very, very bad. And I got into a lot of very heavy drinking, and especially for me as a young driver, and then be behind the wheel and stuff. But at the same time, and you kind of didn't know what to expect and what you were gonna do. But yeah, and I also got introduced into pornography from very young on. I think I was only probably 12, 13 years old since I got introduced to pornography for the first time.
And that just gets a hold of a young boy like nothing else, right?
And yeah, it was very, very bad. But even at that time, it was more of a not. You felt bad after you watched something, but then it didn't take long. You did it again, and whenever you had a chance, you did that. And at that time, there was a lot of magazines and stores and stuff like that. And of course, what do? And you try and go there, and if you don't buy the book, at least just kind of go there and
glimpse.
Yeah.
It's so destructive. And then like I've shared so many times already, even on the podcast here, how accessible it is now, where there's young kids that have access to their phones all day long, and they're looking at the worst stuff you can imagine.
Yeah, so easily. And I actually got into that from when I was young, like I said already, and not that I was like really heavily hooked on it, but I did it throughout the time until I got saved. And after I got saved, I put a dead stop to it, and that was my very last time I did that. And
wow.
Yeah, and I decided that, you know what, enough is enough of that.
So obviously, if you got married, Old Colony, you and Anna, that you must have gone through the whole baptism preparation classes and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Did your parents start coming to church then too, or?
Yeah, they came more often as soon as they seen that, you know, that
it's time to get our boys straightened out a bit and all that.
Yeah, and at that time then work wasn't as much. We weren't working on a farm as much, so there was more Sundays that were available, because we were working Sundays and everything on a farm in Brantford. But then now that I got, when I started getting baptized, and of course my brother was like right behind me. My brother Abe was right behind me. My brother Henry was not even too far off. He was a year later. Me and my brother, I'm not even sure now if we got baptized the same year or not, but it was very close anyways. My parents, they lost three boys.
All got married.
Yeah.
My oldest two brothers got married the same year as well, baptized, and they were only 18 and 19 years old, so it was like, what in the world? Yeah. For me, they seemed grown up because I was a kid. But now thinking back, my brother was 18 for 2 weeks when he got married to his wife.
Wow. Well, my wife was a lot younger.
How old were you?
I was 21 when I got married.
Okay.
My wife was only just barely 16.
So when you went through that whole process of baptism and stuff, were you then seriously considering God, or was it just this is what you have to do to get married?
This is what we have to do to get married, and that's kind of what
answer all the right questions, read the right answers.
Yeah, try to do the best to. And then of course with the confession you
had to go before the preachers and confess your sins.
And of course you try to do it as good as you could, but if you could get a chance to slip one or two things out of it, of course you would try not to say it, and then later on you kind of felt guilty, and then
you go back.
You kind of go back and you know. And then,
I heard of sometimes those preachers would actually pry and say, "Did you ever do this?" I didn't have any of that.
Me neither. Like I never had that, but I had quite a bit. Like there's a lot of little things that maybe I shouldn't have had to share or didn't have to, but that was kind of what we were taught, you know. We have to confess to them, not to God. And at that time, I tell you, I never confessed anything to God. I never prayed, you know, before I go there or anything like that. Like
were you in the habit of praying prayers though?
Well, just our
unser Vater.
Yeah, and then whatever we use before we eat and stuff like that, and that was it. But not that I knew what I was saying. It was
never from the heart.
That's right. It was just something that we were taught that's what we got to say before we eat or before we go to bed or in the morning when we wake up, and that's it.
Interesting.
Yeah. And
so a lot of the guys that I talk to that were raised in Old Colony, they talk about from very young on being afraid of dying, being afraid of hell, being conscious of God and worried and kind of scared and going to bed crying sometimes, not knowing. You didn't have much fear of God or apprehension.
No, it was more after I was married.
Yeah.
That's when it kicked in, and that's when me and my wife started going to church a lot more often.
Okay.
And then because that we kind of went to church more often, then I became a Sunday school teacher very shortly after. A couple of years after we were married, and that was kind of
starts to put a weight on you, right?
That's when the weight started coming down, and that's when I really looked into it, and that's when it started. But then again, it was very on and off, and it was still.
And you were still drinking fairly heavily and into pornography the whole time?
Yeah, at that time, no, I wasn't into pornography that much. It was only I think 4 or 5 years after we were married where it started going back again. Like at that time, I didn't do it, every now and then a little bit. But yeah, it was like 4 years after we were married, that's when it kind of went in more and more. And, at times it was pretty bad, I guess it was kind of depending on how I felt, I guess, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How much free time I had.
Your family, we don't need to dig up any, point out other people's faults or sins or anything, but would you say that your family was a happy family, or did you fight a lot amongst each other?
No, me and my brother Ben, we have fought quite a bit. We were not on very good terms.
With your parents, things were pretty good?
My parents, There's like the little things, like the normal things, but not that there was like huge fights or that where I moved out or where I smashed a car or whatever. No, or anything like that, or smashed a wall or anything. No, nothing like that.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I had never had that much.
So then let's take it back up to where you started becoming more and more conscious of God. You're married now, and you're starting to think about your responsibility and the weight of teaching children, and then also having your own children. Like your oldest is now 20-something?
20 years, yeah.
She's 20 years old now?
She's 20 years old, yeah. And yeah, when she was born, that's actually when I stopped smoking. I actually smoked since I was 11 years old.
Oh man.
I was like a heavy smoker till starting at about 11 years old.
You must have seemed like a man to other kids, right? You quit school at 11, started smoking at 11.
Well, I tell you, because my dad, when we lived in Mexico, my dad he was always working for the Spanish people. So he was gone a lot, and we didn't have it that good. So my dad had to kind of work with the Spanish people to bring more money in, right? And so I was kind of pushed into being the man of the house a lot.
That's when you were still in Mexico.
Yeah, that was still when I was in Mexico. And that's when I started smoking. So if I'm a big man anyway, so might as well start smoking, right?
I see.
And I smoked always since Kelly was our oldest daughter was born, and I said I never want any of my children to see me smoke.
That's amazing.
And that was the last time. And
we've raised our kids so much different here now. Like I think about my son, the one that just came in the door here a moment ago. He's 10 years old. Imagine him at 11. Like he just seems like a little kid. He's so sheltered. And sometimes maybe we've done it too much. Like the previous generation, they knew how to work from young on. And where some of these kids now, they don't know. I've tried to. Like my oldest son, he's a good hard worker. I really appreciate him that way. But it's like we're raising them in a totally different environment and culture than what you guys were raised in.
Absolutely. Oh yeah. And it was it was easy. It was easier, but at the same time it was hard. Like it wasn't that. Milking cows at a young age like that.
That's hard work.
That's hard, very hard.
I used to read a lot of cowboy books, and many times the father of the home would leave the farm to go to the nearest town for a week or something like that, because it took a while to get there, and he would turn to his 12-year-old boy and say, "You're the man. You take care of this place." And the boy would, this is me. I'm taking care. And all of a sudden, he's a young man.
Yeah.
Where now 12-year-olds, they're just little tiny kids. 19-year-olds are considered little kids anymore.
Absolutely. Right? And there's a lot of them, even at 19 years old, they still don't even know how to work.
Yeah.
And to me, it's kind of like, that's kind of too bad, because they should be taught how to work already at a more younger age, right?
So when we look back on our history and our parents, the upbringing that we had, there's a lot to criticize. We could kind of be like, this wasn't right, that wasn't right. But when you look at some of these things, we can't help but just say, man, I'm so thankful that I had this opportunity. Even though you probably now wish you would have gotten some more education.
Oh, absolutely.
But at the same time, you got the ability to work, and you have the know-how. You can do all kinds of things. You're very, creative with your hands and stuff like that. So.
And I do. I try to get into pretty much everything. Whatever looks good to work or whatever, I
figure it out.
I want to do it. And I'm usually the person that when somebody gives me an owner's manual or whatever for any sort, that's the first thing that goes into the garbage, first of all.
I'm
going to figure that out in a different way, because I hated reading. I didn't want to have anything to do with it, and I did it just, myself. And I'm a heavy equipment operator right now, and all those things I figured out on my
no
on
education
my own.
In that way too.
I never went and got any training or nothing.
Some of the smartest guys I know, like I think of Pete Wolf, for instance. You know Pete Wolf?
Oh yes, yeah.
The guy's like super smart. He's figured out so many. He's built a really nice company, and he's very well off because of it. Never had any real education. No. He still struggles with reading and writing, but I mean, my intellect, I think, pales in comparison to his. I think he's much smarter than I am in many ways, right? I just got a little more book learning maybe or something. So
yeah, and that's just kind of how it was with me. I just wanted to do the hands-on, and I wanted to get into whatever I could. Like I wanted to learn like lots. I didn't want to be just stuck to one thing, and then that was it.
That's cool. So then Kelly was born, and you quit smoking because of her?
Well, I just did not want my children. My wife always never liked it. She's like, I don't like the smell. She didn't want me to have that. But I
felt dirty or sinful.
Yeah, and it always stunk. And then at that time it started being, that you couldn't smoke in the house anymore. And I'm like, I'm not gonna. Enough is enough. And I stopped smoking at that time, and never.
Just out of sheer willpower, you just did it.
But it was hard. Before that, I had tried, but it never fell through. I tried for 3 days or 4 days, and
I'm getting back to this. And then after that, you just quit.
Yeah, and I quit. It was very hard, but But yeah, I stopped, and that was it.
So then the kids started coming. You had Kelly, and then
and then Mindy came, and then Jessica, and then Michelle, and then
just boom, 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 boom.
First four girls, and then after that was 4 boys.
That's cool.
Yeah, Marcus and Josiah and Carson and Felix came after that, and yeah, that's so we got 8 of them right now.
You've been married for about 22 years, 21.
21 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's neat. And so, if your last son was born when? How old is he?
He's just over 2 years.
Just over 2.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you got saved finally between the last 2 kids there.
That's right. Yeah, and I know when the reason where that came from, where I got saved, I guess the reason where it really hit me was when my wife got really, really sick, when she ended up in the hospital, and she the doctors actually gave up on her. They were saying that, she's not going to make it.
And this is just 4 years ago?
Yeah, this 4 years ago. It was almost a year before I got saved. No, about 3 months before I got saved when that happened. And and I knew, because my wife, she kept on saying that she was saved, and at that time I said the same thing. Oh, I'm saved, but really
didn't mean much.
No, and I knew it in my heart too, and like that I didn't even really know what it meant. I didn't really know what it even was, right? Being saved, but I said it just to get people off my back.
Okay.
For example, at that time I was hanging out with George Jansen quite a bit. My cousin, he's my cousin.
The guy that is now in Alberta?
That's right.
Okay.
John Jansen's brother, and I know at that time he was really into the gospel a lot, and then he wanted to share the gospel with me. Oh, I hated him.
But he was in Alberta then already, right?
No, not at. I don't think it was at that time, or was it maybe it was before we were even. No, I'm not even sure now when it was. If it was maybe before we were married.
Okay.
But even then, I did not like to hear about that, and I just wanted him to get off my back. So I just kept on saying, "Oh yeah, I'm saved. Like,
yep.
just get off my back already, right?" And I didn't want to hear anything about it. And he's not the only one. There's lots of people that ask me, so what? How's the gospel? And like, how?
What do you think about Jesus?
Yeah. And I'm like, oh yeah, no, that's it's all good. That's just. Let's move on. I just wanted to talk about something else.
This.
Yeah.
You were still Old Colony?
Oh yeah, and
so what was your wife sick from again? I know you've shared with me.
Yeah,
before.
she had Addison disease. It's a very rare disease. But when she got it for the first time, nobody knew what it was. Like the doctors even, and they had to figure out what's wrong with her, right? And when she kept on just going less and less and less. And she started getting weaker, and she lost a lot of weight. She was just like skin and bones, and when you live with her like that, you're not noticing that how fast things go down, right? And I was working really like a lot of hours at that time yet too, and I don't know, maybe I was maybe being a little careless as well. Like I didn't really care for it too much.
Should be okay.
Yeah, it should be okay, or you're gonna get over it sooner, or whatever, right? But it just got worse and worse until the one day when I was working in Ingersoll, all of a sudden I got a call from my daughter Mindy, saying, "You better get home right now because Mom is she's still breathing, but she's like her muscles are done. Like she has nothing.
Oh man." And
of course I rushed home, and I carried her into the truck, and that was very, very hard. And
where were you guys living then?
We were living in Stratfordville.
In this house now already? Okay. Yeah. And so then you took off to the hospital?
Yeah, I took off to the hospital like very fast.
But they had already been doing some tests trying to figure out?
At that time, nothing yet.
Nothing? This was her first?
At that time, that was the first time. Yeah, they had nothing yet. And when I carried her into the hospital on the nearest wheelchair that I could find, and I sat her down, and I tell you, they were testing, trying to right away. They're trying to figure out what was wrong.
Starting from scratch, right?
I don't know. And then that's when they started working on her, and then they noticed that there was something about the Addison disease, and we had no idea what it was. And I think they were kind of new with that as well. And that's when the doctor said, and the nurses said, you know what? There's no chance. She's got. And her brain was swollen, like it was around her brain.
Oh man!
That, like all the X-rays and everything that they did, and they said that there's swollen in the brain, and there was just a lot of things. Her adrenal glands, they were just they were so damaged, like very,
Wow.
which they are still.
Still, yeah, she's on medication for life now.
Oh yeah, she's gonna be on medication for life, and yeah, and then at that time, that's when I realized, you know what, my wife, I know she's been saying that she's saved, and I trusted it, but that's when I questioned myself, you know, if she's gonna go to heaven, what about me? And that's when things kicked in, and right in the hospital there too, I'm like thinking like, wow, like what am I gonna do with this? And that's where where I started praying more, and I asked people to pray for us as well, but even that was still hard. It was like I wasn't used to that. Like I wasn't.
Almost feel kind of hypocritical, maybe even.
Yeah, but at that time we didn't go to the All Colony anymore, so it was a little bit easier already. We went to the CMC church just down the road over here. That's when we started going there, but that was very fresh still, very new to us. And yeah,
were they preaching the gospel there?
Oh yeah, and they were, like, that was very, very good, and we learned a lot from there. It's just to us that just felt like that we needed to move on, and then that's when we started going to Springfield.
At what point though did you start to see Jesus, the cross, and make a connection?
Well, it was about 2 months after my wife got home from the hospital.
Somehow she pulled through, eh?
Yeah, she did pull through, and when she woke up, woke up and she was like ready to go home, and the doctor said when she's gonna wake up, she's not gonna be normal. Like things are not gonna be the way you think they're gonna be. And I was okay with it as long as she would just wake up, right? Because I wasn't ready to lose her yet.
Yeah.
And
your kids sure weren't.
Yeah, and all the kids were still around. That was before Felix yet when this happened.
That's right.
And and then when she did all of a sudden wake up, that's when the doctors they're like freaking out. They're like, what's going on here? She's on so much of that medicine that makes her stay asleep.
Yeah.
And they're like wondering what's happening here. And she started just waking up, and she wasn't supposed to be waking up. And then all of a sudden they called the nurse and they said, should we give her another needle? No. The doctor said, no, let's see what happens. Let's see what's going to happen. And she started getting better and better. And then all of a sudden then there's a nurse that came in there, and she's like, you know what, we have no idea what has happened here, what has gone on here, but this is a miracle. She
should have had brain damage.
She
should have been down and out for months maybe, or if she made it at all.
But they made already arrangements with me to stay at the hospital at Ronald McDonald, because they said that she's going to stay here for a long time. and she didn't. I think it was just probably barely over a week that she was there. And then we went home.
So this all started leading into your, like 2 months later, you said you started to recognize.
Yeah, and that's when my uncle from Texas, he's already passed away as well. That uncle, he was sharing with me with this men's encounter, and I'm like, I don't know what men's encounter is, and at that time I wasn't sure if I wanted to get into anything, because I didn't want to. I was too scared for people to teach me the wrong things, right? And people talking bad about men's encounters and stuff like that. I wasn't sure, but I thought, you know what do I got to lose? I went after he had long talks with me and tried to convince me. So the very first encounter that they had, I was supposed to be going, but then there was a family gathering that was happening at that time, and then I kind of brushed it off, and kind of like, that's okay.
That's a good excuse to not have to go, eh?
And then when the next one came, which wasn't even that long after, the next one came, and that's when my uncle really, really pushed me, and he really wanted me to go, and he knew that I had a little bit of interest already, so he says that he thought that was going to be an easier way for me to go, and so I did. I said to him, "Yep, okay, sign me up. I'll go. Yep." And when it came closer to it, Satan just attacked me. I tell you, that it just attacked me so hard. I was getting so angry. Even a couple of days before that, I went in the shop, and I tell you, I was so angry at my family. I was so angry at everything. And when I look back now, I don't even know what I was even angry for, like what it was. Why?
Was anger a pretty big part of your life?
Oh yeah, I've always had a lot of anger problems, lots and lots. Oh, it was always very bad. My kids, my wife were always they were very scared of me. Yeah.
Were you abusive?
Somewhat, yeah, but not like very bad. There's a couple of times where I did hurt my wife, where I pushed her against the wall and kind of put my hand against her throat, right?
Man.
Pushed her against. And that's what alcohol does, right? Anger and alcohol, that both together. But that was more before that yet, before she got sick and when we were still younger. Yeah, that. But then after that, you kind of felt bad, but at the same time, it was almost like, didn't take long. The same thing kicked in again, drinking again, and then of course started getting angry, and yeah, that was.
So you'd be heading into this whole men's encounter thing. I'm not familiar with how those things work, but you were pretty angry leading up to it.
Yeah, and then my uncle, of course, he WhatsApped me again. He said, "So George, you're going to a men's encounter," and then at that time, when the last time when he did call me, there was that I think 2 days before. Yeah, 2 days before that. And at that time I made up my mind already. I'm not going because I was just so angry with everything that was happening at home and with myself and everything. I was just so angry, and I felt so dirty and just I felt like that I was just nothing anyways. And then my uncle, of course, when I went into the shop when I was so angry, and I just tossed things and tables went flying, everything that I could get on my hand, I just flying. I hit my hand. I hit it on the table yet. I hurt myself quite a bit. I never did anything with it, but I just, and then all of a sudden, while that anger, everything happened, all of a sudden I got a WhatsApp message, and I took my phone and I was just about gonna smash it because I didn't want nothing anymore, and I just grabbed my phone. I was gonna smash it, and then I seen it was my Uncle Henry, and I'm like, oh boy. How am I going to explain this to him? Like, he has no idea what I'm going through, and I know what he's doing. I know he's going to ask me to go men's encounter, but if I'm not going to answer, and he's going to call me, I know he will. And so I listened to it, and then the first thing that he says, "Not yet. That's right to the men's encounter for." He always kind of talked a little slow. He had a very deep voice all the time. And I'm like, nope, I'm not going. I didn't say that, I didn't say it to him. But then I'm like, but if I'm going to tell him that I'm not going, oh boy, then he's going to be very angry.
You've been telling him for so long that you're going to, and now to say again that you're not going to.
But then I said to him, all right, yeah, I'm going to go. And even at that time, my wife wasn't happy with me at all. Not good at all. My whole family, they were all scared of me. They would rather see me gone than be in the
It was that bad, eh?
Oh, yeah. And so I ended up going. So that was that weekend, that weekend that came up there. I ended up going. I had no idea. I never asked anybody. I had no idea what men's encounter was or anything. And it felt altogether. It felt very awkward. But now looking back, it was a good thing. And I was there. Well, we went there Friday afternoon already, to the place where we were all meeting up there, and and then. I didn't seem much like there's anything good that was going to be there, but I just stuck it around because I couldn't leave anyways, right? Because they kind of made sure that you go with the bus, so you couldn't just jump.
Can't just hop in your vehicle and take off.
Leave, right? So I stuck around, and then Friday night already. Oh boy, all the testimonies that I heard and the teachings that I heard, and these were guys that they had really practiced this, and they really knew how to get into people's hearts, right? But man, did I feel heavy Friday night. I barely slept at all. That from Friday to Saturday, I barely slept anything, and just talking to people, and people are just sharing their stuff, and the people that were serving, they're like trying to get into your heart, trying to see where's your problem, what's going on.
So you're starting to feel lots of conviction. But at that time,
I admitted it already that I'm not saved. Like all these things that you guys are talking about here, all that, and I'm like, no way, I'm not saved. And I mentioned it to one of the guys, and they're like, well, let's see what happens during this weekend. And of course, then it was Saturday morning came up, and wow, there was some very, very good teaching, very hard teaching with that, and that's where it all kicked in. And then it was Saturday around 2:30 in the afternoon, that's when God says, you know what, yeah, I think you got all of it already, and you heard enough, and now it's time for you to change. And that's when my heart it was just so heavy. And it was the weed guy that passed away on a plane crash.
Yep.
He's the one that came and talked to me. I just started crying because I just felt so horrible of all the things that I did, and everything that was going on. I just felt so bad. I just started crying like a little baby. He started coming up to me and he asked me what was wrong. And I'm like, I don't know. I feel like I'm just nothing. I feel just.
You pretty much came to the end of yourself.
Yeah, that was the end of the rope. And then he asked me if he could pray for me or pray with me. And I said, yeah. And then he's like, hey, how about you come with me? And then they took me off to the side. There was a couple other guys, and of course they laid hands and started praying. And he was Mr. Weeb. He was sharing that, you know, how you can get saved and all that, and
talking about Jesus and the cross and
and that's where I really took it on, and that's when all of a sudden I just sat down. I just kind of fell back, and I just looked up and I said, Jesus, just take me just the way I am. And I was so weak. I had no,
physically weak.
Yeah, I had no power. And I said, just God, you know what you want from me, and I will give you my life. Just take me just the way I am, and I want to be better from there on. And that's when things just got lighter and lighter, and things just went a lot better from there on. And
was there a deep connection already with the cross and recognizing that, you know, what he did on the cross was now affecting you?
Yeah, and before that, when I just started coming to men's encounter, I never knew what the shedding of the blood was, you know, and I learned that right there in that little while, because Jesus had poured that blood out for you, and that is something. That's what he used to wash me clean, and that's, you know, he did this for me, and that's where it really kicked in, because that Jesus would have done that like for me, really. Mm-hmm. and that's where
awesome.
Where I took that in, that, you know, he did that for me, and now I just need to live for him, and I need to get saved, and that's when
Then you started reading the book finally, trying to figure out how to make out these words, eh?
I wasn't really reading. It was more listening.
Okay.
If I could get in an audio Bible or whatever, I was listening, because at that time I couldn't even read still. I couldn't even read. I started to learn how to read from that point on.
Yeah.
But it was still very hard. And, you know, when you're starting to read and you know what, things don't really make sense, and it's like, or if it takes a little bit longer, then it's like,
you're better off just listening.
Just put it off, and then you started listening. But I knew I wanted to read the Bible more, and that's when I started reading more. And I actually learned how to read just from the Bible. Before that, I never even knew how to read much.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And that's where I accepted the cross, and that's where things were different, and that's where I let go of my pornography. My drinking, I left it at that time until shortly after, probably about a half a year after, I started drinking somewhat again. But then after that, it was just kind of every now and then. It was more like just a weekend thing every now and then,
but never to
got,
excess.
No, I don't remember that I got anything like very heavy into it or anything like that. No.
Some of you guys that are watching probably watched my conversation with John Fair. John Fair is your brother-in-law. You're married sisters, right?
That's right.
Your wife is older.
No, my wife is younger than.
Your wife is younger than John's wife. Okay.
Yeah, because Lena is the oldest girl.
Okay.
There's another boy that's older than her yet. But.
So, you were one of the ones that were very responsible for trying to help this guy out. But trying to help a serious drug addict is like pulling teeth, right? Like, what do you do?
Yeah, but that was more. I was helping him out, but I think I was more making him angry.
Yeah.
Because this was more, even from before I got saved, I was trying to
get him out of the drugs.
Because Lena kept on calling us and saying, you know what, we got to do something with John. You know, he's not home again. He doesn't come home again. He spent the night again, and you know, and he ended up in jail a couple of times, and he was kicked out of the house a couple of times, and he wasn't home for it was like, I think it was almost 3 years straight that he wasn't at home at all with his family.
After an altercation and the police got involved and all that.
And he was so heavy into the drugs and all that. And that's where I got kind of involved. I wanted to help him, but I didn't know how.
Yeah.
So that it dragged on, and there's times it got a little bit easier, and then times that it got hard again.
With a guy like him, it was always kind of like, oh, maybe there will be some change. Maybe like I know Tony, his brother, tried to help him out quite a bit, and there would be times where he'd be like, I think maybe this time John's going to change.
And it did feel like it too.
Yeah, but John told me that one time smoking meth, and he was completely hooked. Like his body demanded it. He couldn't live without it.
And I've been for all the guys that I've been dealing with and trying to help, they all say the same thing. He's like, it takes just a one time. With the crystal meth, it takes one time. After that, it's like the feeling that you get and all that, you're hooked on it. And I have never done any of that kind of stuff, so I couldn't say. But just by hearing from these guys and from what I've been involved.
Yeah.
But with John Fair, and it just got worse and got worse. And then we started going to a church in Springfield. Church in Springfield, and then that's where our pastor John Dyke kind of got involved, him and his wife, because I asked for help because they needed counseling, because that's the only thing that I could think of at that time, that they needed counseling, they need some sort of help, right? So we got them involved, and so they were counseling them, because of course, what did John say? John said it's always Lena. It was always Lena.
Yeah.
So John Dykes, they were saying, you know what? Well, let's counsel Lena then. So we're gonna try and see what we can do with her then, if everything is just her fault. We all knew already it wasn't
sure.
like that, but because of John just doing that, and Lena got actually saved, like almost I think it was the first or the second, I'm not 100% sure now, the time they met. That's when
I remember hearing that she broke down and all of a sudden was rejoicing in Christ.
And then I think that's where John, I think that's where he kind of got kicked a little bit. Wow, you know what, she got saved now. And John knew the gospel. John knew,
he was very smart.
Oh yeah, he knew. Even before, when he was doing drugs, he knew. And and then of course John Dykes, they found Joshua House.
This is a place in BC that is like a rehab center for hardcore drug addicts.
That's right. Yeah, and that's when they found that, and that's where we tried to get John to go over there. But no.
Again, like pulling teeth. Man, we tried. I remember talking to Tony quite a bit, and to you sometimes.
Me and Tony and John, we all got involved. We all kind of got...
Almost team up on him.
And we did. And there's plenty of times where we did team up on him. When we went to their house, there's normally the three of us that went there. And what's the first thing? When we go there, we waited there like sometimes an hour. 45 minutes to an hour, because he was just in the washroom. He was hoping for us to just leave. Like he would go and hide, because he did not want to talk to us.
Wow.
And then it just kept going like that, and we kept on bugging him. We kept on saying, you know what, we will. And he was doing a lot of dumpster diving at that time, so he had a lot of stuff at his house and everything. But it was just so hard. And then of course, all of a sudden, the one time, he messed up, and he did it to himself. He went behind the high school in Elmer, and I guess he must have smoked up there again, and he fell asleep in the vehicle, and the cops found him.
And then he had to make a decision. You either get straight, or you lose your family, or something.
Well, the police, they got children's aid involved, just like that right away anyways, right?
Yeah. And so then he finally kind of agreed to go, but even then, at last minute, he was like fighting. Like, I don't want to go. You guys are making me go. This isn't right.
Yeah, and at that time, I wasn't sure, if the forcing idea was
a
good idea or was it not. But we just forced him, whatever we possibly could. Just
forced along with him, like he would agree to it, so then you would hold him to it.
That's right.
Like, it wasn't like you're going at gunpoint.
No.
But like, you can remind him, like, John, no, you said you're going to go.
Yeah, and now you change your mind.
You need to, for the sake of your wife and your kids. If you don't, your life is over.
Yeah.
And so you kind of pressured him a little bit with his own agreement.
That's right. Yeah, and then when that happened, like in between that's when I got Peter Gunther. There was two other fellows that were working with Peter Gunther for him to go, and he's just a young man as well. He's not married. He doesn't have any kids or nothing, and he was just a single guy, and that's when I got involved with him.
And he was hooked on the same type of drugs.
Yeah, same thing, and probably even worse, just as worse as John, or if not, maybe even worse. He didn't work either. He didn't do nothing. And his parents were just they were just tired of them just doing the drugs, right? And so the first time when I went there, they asked me just to come and just to see if we could convince him this. So there was,
because you'd been trying with John Fair.
Yeah, and I wasn't sure what I was gonna do or what, but of course when we went there, and the poor guy came upstairs, and he was like all crumpled up like that, and he lay down on the couch and right in front of us there. laid on a couch, and he was just in so much pain. Like he was going into withdrawal, where he was just kind of trying to get rid of it because he had no money. He couldn't get any drugs, but he was trying to get money from people so he could get his drugs again. And he was so sick. He was just, it was so bad with him. And so I asked him. I said to him, to me it looks like that you're going through a withdrawal. He's like, he kind of looked at me like that, and he's like, how do you know what that means? I said, well, I do kind of work with another guy that I know a little bit. And so I didn't want to say it was my brother-in-law or anything like that. So I just said I kind of work with another guy a little bit. So I kind of see when he does the withdrawal and what happens to them. And then he's like, yeah, I am. But he's like, right now, I need my drugs. I need my drugs. And then I said to him, I wish I could help you. And I said, I think I can help you. He's like, the only way you can help me is with drugs. And then I said to him, well, I think that there is a better way of helping. I said, I think so. And he's like, what's that? And then he's like, rehab. I've been there. I've been to a rehab once already. So he had gone to Mexico, right? And he's like, I don't know. I don't want that. And then I said, you know what? This one here's a BC, and I think you would like this one. And everything that I read, found out about how everything worked over there, and so I said to him, yeah, I think you're gonna like this. And then of course we talked like that for a while, and then right at that time when I was talking to him, somebody delivered the drugs to him.
Oh boy!
Right there and then, and so I thought, well, you know what? I don't think that this is gonna work.
That's a lost cause.
But he said, you know what? Let me think about it. That's all he said. Let me think about it. I'll get back to you. And so he walked out. He walked downstairs, and we talked to one of his other brothers that was also trying to help him as well. And so we talked to him for a while, and so finally we just said, you know what? We're just gonna leave it and see what happens. And I don't even think it was a week after that he called one of the other guys that were working with him right from the beginning, called him and said, yeah, I'm ready to go. And then they called me right away too, and they told me, yeah, like Peter Gunther, he's ready to go. And I'm like, what?
So you sent Peter out to BC before John then?
Before John, yeah.
Because John kept putting it off and putting it off.
And so he went there, and he stayed there his 3 months. And after that, you know what? He decided he didn't even come home. He's been there now for 9 months. It's almost 10 months, and he's actually working there.
He's helping out with other.
He's actually working one of the guys or he's working in the office. He is actually our German translator.
There you go.
He is the guy that's working with all the.
Because there's a lot of Mennonites coming there now.
Right now, there's a lot of Mennonites there. A lot of Mennonites that I have helped with, and a lot of Mennonites that the other guys, and a lot of them that we hadn't even helped. Like we just put the word out, Joshua House.
Yeah, everybody knows now that that's the place to go.
Yeah, so
I know, like a lot of times in the Mennonite culture, you'd almost think that drug habit wouldn't be so prevalent, but it's become very, very common, right?
Oh,
so
yeah.
now when people start hearing that somebody else got free, and now you've almost become like the Ontario representative of Joshua House in BC, right? Where you're in contact with them quite a bit.
Well, they know me already. Every time I call, they already know. Oh, that's George. And when I call Richard says, "Oh, hi, George," right away. He has me already in his contact, so he already knows. What do you got now? What do you got? And that's when Henry Wall, I got him to go there too, and I had almost as a hard time with that guy than I did with John Fair.
Really?
John, like he was one of those guys too. He was seeing things, and his wife was always very scared of him. Because he was seeing things, he was hearing things, and there was nothing there. And
well, I think drugs and even severe alcohol use can often open the door to devils.
Oh yes,
devils come into those through those ways. Like they refer to some alcohol as spirits. Even I don't know if necessarily every alcoholic drink has a spirit involved with it, but when somebody opens their body up to that kind of takeover by a substance like an alcohol or a drug, they do open themselves up to spirits as well. So I wouldn't be surprised if he was seeing actual devils and who knows what else.
See, I never noticed that from John Fair as much, but I think he was kind of trying to keep it for himself. But with Henry Wall, with him, I really learned a lot about that, and I was actually kind of getting up to a point where I was getting kind of scared, like what's going on here?
Kind of freaky.
Like he's got something in him that it was very scary, and but I didn't want to let him know that I was
intimidated or scared at all.
Scared, but I got him to I tried to get him going, but he just refused. He didn't want to go. He wanted to go with his family. He wanted his whole family there then, and he's like, if I go myself, I'm not going, and he just stuck to it, and his wife kept on calling. He's doing that again. He's very bad again, and it just kept on going like that. And every time, then she wanted us to come over. So me and her brothers, we went over and we tried to talk to him. There's times where I stay there till like 2 a.m. And it was a majority of the time it was outside. Of course, a lot of mosquitoes, and I can still see it. And he would just not give in. All of a sudden, the same thing. Children's Aid got involved, and that was it. He was at the end of the rope. He came right to my property, or right onto our property. He came and he asked for help.
Really?
He's like, I'm ready to go. So the day that he was going to go out there, he rolled his pickup truck.
Oh, wow.
Actually, right on John Jansen's property.
Oh, I remember hearing that.
Yeah, he rolled his truck, and I think it was at 4 o'clock in the morning, because he was already a little bit late, and it was wet, so he kind of lost control, and then that's where he rolled his truck. And then when that happened, I thought, oh, great. Yeah. Now he's going to say, you know what, it wasn't meant for me to go, I'm not going to go now. But no, when he came out of the hospital, I visited him at the hospital, and when he came out of the hospital, he's like, oh, no, I'm still gonna go. He's like, get me another plane ticket, let's go. And we lost that money from the plane because I didn't buy no insurance, right? And I bought those tickets, and we lost that money because it was over almost $3,000. And he's like, no, I'll pay for it, whatever it takes. Yeah, just buy another ticket and let's go. I said to him, no. Now you have to slow down a little bit. Let's get your truck out of the pound first, so you're not gonna end up paying for that. Let's just make sure that you are healthy enough that you're not going to end up in the hospital over there. So I said, let's just wait a couple of days, and then we'll go from there. And of course, he agreed with it. And so he got his pickup truck out of the pound, and he got everything kind of straightened out. And yeah, so and whenever it was time again, whatever we decided for him to go, he ended up going. And when he got over there, he was so extremely angry at me. He's like, what have I got myself into?
What did you do to me?
And then of course, because of all this COVID, right, so he had to kind of quarantine, and he had to kind of be by himself. So there's a lot of things, a lot of time for him to
solitary
think.
confinement.
And that's where he was withdrawing at the same time with thinking about everything. He was just so angry with me. I only found that out after. He actually told me that himself. And after he was there, I think for about 3 weeks, things started getting a little bit better. And then at Christmas time, he wanted to come home, and like he meant that I'm coming.
He had been free from the drugs now for some time. Yeah,
but and he thought, you know what, I'm free from it for so long. That was just not even quite 2 months. And then he just wanted to come home, and he wanted to come home, and I just kept on saying, I don't think it's a good idea. And even if you come home, you can't even come and see your family anyways, because the Children's Aid won't allow that. And I made an agreement with the Children's Aid that, because he was supposed to be away from his family for 6 months, but I made an agreement with the Children's Aid that if he is going to go to a rehab, and if he's going to come back in 3 months, is he going to be able to come home to his family? Because if not, I don't think that there's any point in sending him to rehab. And of course they said, yeah, okay.
He comes back clean.
Yeah, if he comes back clean, if he stays clean, then he can come home to his family. And then they ended up moving to the Kitchener area. And they were still kind of dealing with the Children's Aid from here, from St. Thomas, back and forth, and he comes home, and he's home now with his family, and he did stay till after Christmas. He wanted to come home for Christmas, and there again he was very angry that he didn't, but now he's very thankful that he stayed there.
And now he's free. He's been free for a year.
No,
or only just since this past Christmas.
Yeah, so he came home January 20th. He came home.
Wow.
And from then and I just talked to him this morning. Again, I keep contact with him as well, and with John Fair. And
yeah. So I'm trying to figure out what motivates you to do it, because I've dealt with John Fair a little bit before, or through Tony a little bit, and I feel like I would get so tired of it, I would just throw in the towel. But with John, I can see, like, his kids are your nieces and nephews. You know, his wife is your wife's sister, so there's this love of family involved. But now it seems like you've poured yourself into this ministry where you're helping people who are living in hotel rooms with 6 other guys, and you're willing to put yourself into it and throw yourself into all hours of the day and night to help these guys. What motivates you? Why would you do it?
Well, I think it kind of started like you said already, because I couldn't see John like the way he lived, and if his kids are gonna end up like him, that's gonna just make it worse and worse. And so that's where I kind of got involved in that a little bit, right? And that's where I could just see, you know what, if I could help another person like this, and then everyone that I have helped, you know, it was always family that was involved in that, right? And I'm looking at their children, and I'm like thinking, you know, if you only knew how much damage you are doing to this family.
Yeah.
And with John, I even said it to John plenty of times. I said it to Henry Wall. I have said it to him plenty of times. I said it to Peter Gunther. And of course he didn't have any kids, but his mom, his dad, like the rest of them. And I could just see that if it worked for John, and if it worked for Peter Gunther, you know, you can keep going. And
So you started seeing some hope.
And I had given up on John Fair plenty of times. I had given up on Henry Wall lots of times. I just gave up. I'm like, no. But then when I went home, it felt like, you know, God was still putting pressure on there. Like, don't give up. And then, of course, after a couple of days, it just kind of went back. And then, of course, what do? Then I go back and I say,
you start thinking maybe there's a chance.
Maybe
right?
If I go one more time, maybe it's gonna do it. And then I go back, no, and then it almost felt like, you know what, now you got slapped in the face one more time. You go home again, and then you felt so discouraged. And then every time, it just felt like, you know what, God just wanted me to come back and just talk
That's
to them.
interesting.
And especially when they call and they're asking for help, and that you would just plainly ignore them. I just couldn't do it.
There was a preacher I heard years ago. He was trying to explain why the love for people is not enough. Like he said, let's say you're a missionary in a foreign land. Say you go to Peru, and there's this really a remote tribe who's never heard of the gospel, doesn't know Christ, and you love these people. So you go in there, you to preach the gospel to them, and they end up beating you and throwing you out of the city. What's going to motivate you now to go back into that city? It won't really be love for those people, because they're cruel and mean, and they've betrayed you and backstabbed you, and they've hurt you. He says the only thing that can motivate you now is God deserves these people. Christ died for these people's souls, and who am I to say, well, they're not worthy of it, or I'm not going to continue on? Like if God gave himself for me and pursued me to the point where I was saved, then even though this person isn't worthy of it, Christ gave his life for this person. So that should be, the love of Christ should constrain us, not so much the love for that person, because that will wear thin. But if it's the love for the people that they're hurting and the love for God's glory, then you can keep being motivated.
Yeah, and that's exactly what happened to me. It just that if it wasn't for God, I would have given up already a long time ago. But
you deal with it yourself, right?
Yes, do it yourself. But when I seen that, you know, and they never went to church. Like for example, John Fair, they never went to church. They never even wanted to hear the gospel at all. Mm-hmm. And when you're in drugs like that, who wants to listen or hear the gospel, right? And who wants to even? And so many times where I went to John's and I tried to preach the gospel, but you know, it went in one ear, out the other. And there's other times he actually was sharing more than what I was. And I'm sitting there and I'm listening and I'm like, okay.
You know all that stuff.
And you're high right now. And I see that you're high and you're talking about it. And I asked him if he was saved. And oh yeah, he was saved. And he was really strong on it. Oh yeah, and he was saved. And then I want to know when it was that he got saved. Oh, when he was still young. And but he only got saved now when he was.
Now you talk to him. He's been sober and clear for months.
Yeah,
and he is articulate. He can speak precisely. He's not all over the place like a drug addict would be. That he speaks very plainly and simply. He knows what he's trying to say.
And
he asks good questions. Like he spent the last 2 weeks in our youth Bible school. With his sons, and he's paying attention. He's writing he's writing stuff down. He's asking questions that make sense, and it's like, this isn't anything but God, right? Like,
that's right. And he loves sharing the gospel. And anybody that is involved in drugs or whatever, he's the same thing. He says, I want to help people. And right now, there's a lot of things that I think he kind of needs to catch up with, especially with his work and stuff like that. And he's got a full-time job. Before that, he never even had a full-time job or nothing. Right now, he's got a full-time job. And when he gets home, like he's reading the Bible to his children, which he would never do before. And same thing with Henry Wall. Like he's starting willing to share the gospel with his family as well, and they are still all colony people, and you know, for him to do that to his children, it's just awesome.
So I guess, I mean, the reason we wanted to have this conversation was partly to tell your story, but partly because when somebody has somebody in their life that's that hooked on meth or some other really, really severe drug like that, it feels completely hopeless. Like there's no way they'll ever get out of it, because their body becomes so completely dependent upon it that they can't function without it anymore. Like when I had already given up on John from a distance, I'm like, you have to almost force this guy, because his body, he cannot will to get over it. And so you guys constantly pushing and pressuring him finally got him to the point where he caved. He went out there angry and frustrated and upset, but he heard the gospel, and he himself understood the gospel. He already knew it, and he finally fully believed it and grasped it. He's been free from it ever since. So the idea of this conversation is, it's not without hope.
No,
like Christ can even free people who are in the grips of Satan, who have their whole life messed up because of these drugs.
That's right. And just like these guys are saying, it is not because of the guys over there. It's not because of the rehab center over there where they have stopped doing their drugs.
It's just a place for them to finally connect.
It's the place in what they're being taught, right? And explain the Bible. And that the Bible is the book to find your strength to stay out of it too, and to get off of it. And it's very biblical over there, and it's very they really teach the gospel to them like a lot.
Well, that's cool. That's very encouraging, because I know you hear of guys that are on the streets who are willing literally to sell themselves for anything. They will do the most disgusting things you can imagine. Absolutely. Just to get one more hit, one more hit, and then to see somebody like that who cannot get free finally become free, to reckon themselves to be free from sin, right, is incredible.
Yeah, and so far every one of those guys that I have gone there and that have come back, they're saying that, you know, it's only Jesus that can do that.
Because there's people that go there. We've seen several go there and come back, and it didn't work.
Yeah, it didn't work, but their heart wasn't there, right?
Yeah.
And they weren't willing to give up yet, and because they needed to come to the end of the rope, and that's where you question quite a bit. You think it was maybe because they were too much pressure to go there, but they need to come to the end.
Yeah.
And if there's a way you can help them to get even further, come to the end, I would even kind of encourage to have that, to do that, right?
That's a tall order, though, for family to not ever give up, never lose hope. No matter how much they betray you, how much they hurt you, no matter how much they take advantage of you, no matter how much they've stolen from you, lied to you, to know that this is not really them. It's a drug controlling their body. They cannot do what they would want to do.
And that's exactly how
it is. And they need the power of God to be free.
That's right. And it just takes patience. And if you're willing to all of a sudden give that up, like, that's it. You're done.
Yeah.
And
so if there is people listening that are wanting to know more, do they contact you, or are you a little overwhelmed at this point with people?
No, I would be very willing to help them out, and especially even a lot of them, they could even do it themselves. All I would do is just give them the website to go and see Joshua House.
Do you know what the website is?
I think if they just Google it, Joshua House BC.
Okay.
And I think pretty much everything comes up. There's some really, really good testimonies on their websites on guys that have come free from that. There's and they don't deal with just drugs. They do also with alcohol. There's a couple guys that are from Alberta as well that I have helped to go over there, and they were more in the alcohol. And of course, even from, I never even seen the guys, and I was going to get a call from or WhatsApp message or a text message from someone that I don't even know. I have no idea who this person is, but just by word of mouth. And this is something, it's not that I have to be there for them. They can do that themselves, or even family can help them. But I guess it's probably because that they have heard that I have put myself a little bit involved in that. It's probably a little bit easier for them to just kind of ask me first. And there's other guys, they have asked me about it first, and then they try to do it, and then they go there themselves.
Yeah.
Which is...
That's fine.
Oh.
But they do need some connections afterward, right? They need some good accountability, people who they can talk to.
And see, that's what we have right now, and that's what we do right now. We have a WhatsApp group where we have all the guys that want to be in it. So we have them all in there, and then we can talk about if they're also struggling, or if they're feeling weak, or if they need prayers. Like, all they have to do is just say that what's going on, and we're there for them. And we have told each other, we get together and we tell each other, you know what, if there's anything that you need, don't be afraid to ask, because if you don't ask, that's where Satan's going to attack you.
Yeah, you start
Because
keeping things
if you
in the
keep
dark.
things to yourself, that's where Satan's going to attack you. And then I just encourage them, you know, open up. Don't hold it to yourself. Just and if you don't want to say it, talk about it, or if you don't want to say anything, just put thumbs down. Like there's something wrong. Then, you know, prayers are very powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's a bunch of guys praying for someone like that, and they do feel it, and they do know, and if they really don't want to fall, and if they pray themselves as well, you know, it just gets better for them.
That's awesome.
And especially for this Henry Wall, he's not very good with his English as well, so there's quite a bit that he did not quite learn over there, but he has, yeah, he's come out very, very good. So
Well, that's
far.
awesome. Well, hopefully you guys all will keep George in mind as he continues to try to minister to some of these people. It's a tough work, tough job. If you have family members or friends or relatives who have been into this kind of drugs, don't give up on them.
Nope.
Continue to pray for them. Try to point them in the right direction. But yeah, I think we'll close it there, and I really appreciate you coming around.
Yeah, no problem. I enjoyed it.
Right on.